everyone, welcome to Blooming Change. This is rebloom.news' weekly interview series where we interview people who we believe are making a positive impact in the world of sustainability. Just as a reminder, rebloom.news is a weekly newsletter that offers advice, inspiration, and actionable items to live more consciously with the planet, and you can subscribe below because you know you want to. Today, we're chatting with Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi, we're talking all about how to utilize food waste, and we're going to cover 5 ways to be more sustainable in the kitchen. So let me tell you a little bit about Sarah first. First of all, she's known as Hungry Musician on Instagram, and she's a New York City-based violinist, and she is a pro. You have to see her play, so go check her out on Instagram. She inspires me all the time in the kitchen as well because she's also a food blogger. She teaches me how to take the food I already have in the kitchen and make really cool recipes out of it, which I wouldn't have thought about before. And she is working on a program now that she's about to launch where she works with musicians and creatives about how to cook food in their kitchen to feed their creativity. So those are my awesome notes on Sarah. And Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Sure. So first of all, it's so great to be here. I'm so excited that you are launching this newsletter. I think it's amazing. I know that I try to be, conscious of my environmental impact, and a newsletter like this is so helpful. So thank you for starting this, first of all, and also thank you for having me. I'm really excited to share all of my food waste tips. Yeah, so you introduced me pretty well. I mean, you covered it all. I guess I'll share a little bit about how I got started with this. So I am a professional musician in New York City. I've been doing my food blog since I was in college. I went through a period in college where I just wasn't living very healthfully. I was, struggling with weight and energy, and I made a decision that I'm just gonna, learn how to cook food that's delicious and healthy and make it fun. And so my blog is sort of all about that. It's about cooking for your, health, cooking for your energy, cooking for, your creativity is a big thing. I feel like, when I cook, my creativity is off the charts. Even, I love doing music too, and it's my job, but having an additional creative outlet that also feeds me is really important to me. So that's just sort of my general thesis with my blog, I guess.
I love it. I love it. That's such a great thing because food and creativity go hand in hand. You have to fuel your body. Your body's your temple. If you don't feel your best, you can't perform your best. So I totally get it. And I totally understand why you have so many people who love following you and what you talk about. So let's get started now for our viewers here about 5 ways to be more sustainable in the kitchen. So number 1, Sarah, do you want to take away?
Sure. So number one of my favorite ways to reduce waste in the kitchen, and one of the most delicious, is using whole ingredients. So that mostly applies to vegetables, but there are other, ingredients too where you can use the whole thing. So some things that come to mind are broccoli. You can use the stems as well as the florets. So I like to cut them up and roast them when I'm, roasting the florets. I'll just chop them up.
The whole stem on the bottom all the way down to the end?
Yeah, so I'll usually cut off the very end just because it's, busted up and kind of dirty, but, just the very end, and then I just chop it into coins, and then I'll roast it along with the rest of the broccoli. And it's really delicious. And some other things you can do with it, if you have a spiralizer, you can make noodles out of the broccoli stem, and they're really tasty and good for you. Yeah, and some other things that come to mind, strawberry greens are edible. So they're not like so pleasant to eat.
Like the top of strawberries?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, how do you eat those?
They're not super pleasant to eat if you're just snacking, but if you are putting strawberries in a smoothie or something like that, you won't even know it's there, and it's just extra nutrition. So
that's so good to know. I make smoothies like almost every morning, and I always cut off the tops. So now I can just chuck them all in, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Ah, who would have known? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Love it. So what do you do when you have all these foods? So using the whole vegetable is a great tip because you can, compost the little ends of it. Or if you have extra vegetables in general, like that are still viable, is there a way? I think that I heard you one time talking about making your own stock. How does that work with other vegetables?
Absolutely. So this is one of my favorite tips for using the whole vegetable, because you can use so many different kinds of vegetables for this. So carrot peels, celery bottoms, like the white part that you don't normally eat, mushroom stalks. So when you pull those stems off the mushroom, onion skins, garlic peels, and then also cheese rinds. So from Parmesan, from hard cheeses like that. What I'll normally do is I'll have a container in the freezer where I just put all of these little scraps. Also, herbs. If you have herb stalks that you don't want, you can throw those in too. And then once you accumulate a large amount of it, you just throw it in a pot of, boiling water for a couple of hours and then strain it out and you have veggie stock.
Oh, that's such a great idea. Yeah, I feel like that's a great in-between for using your extras before you compost. And then after you're done with all those veggies, you can throw them in the compost and keep
That's
that
true.
going. And I think compost in the kitchen is so important and goes into our first step of using the whole vegetable, because I know in New York City, where we both live, there's composting programs everywhere. You can Google Grow NYC. I think it's literally grownyc.com, and they will show you all the locations around the city and in Brooklyn and the Bronx and New Jersey, everywhere where you can take your compost and drop it off. So if you have something like that in the freezer every week that you keep, you can empty it out every week and drop it off at your composting center. They're not open right now during COVID-19. So once that clears up and things go back to fully operating through the phases, then I'm sure the composting will be open again. But right now they're closed, but eventually they will be back open. So that's awesome. Okay, so using the full vegetable, number one. Number two.
So number two, one of my favorite things to have in the kitchen is glass containers. And it's a great opportunity to, one, use a container that's more sustainable than plastic, healthier to use than plastic. And it's also a great opportunity to save glass containers that you buy food in. So like nut butter jars or pasta sauce that comes in a jar, jelly jars. I try to save as many as possible, both for use in the kitchen and all around the house. Like I keep my makeup brushes in a jam jar in my room, for flowers, for everything. But it's also really good for storing food. So it's good for drinking glasses. It's good for freezing things, actually, which I learned pretty recently. The only thing you need to do is leave an inch of room at the top of your jar, and don't screw it all the way. Wait till it's frozen and then screw the top all the way so it has room to expand. But that's a really, good tip for freezing. I use it to make dressing, especially because with dressing, you have to shake it to get it to, emulsify. So it's really easy with a jar. I use it for my sourdough starter.
Yeah, so many things. And glass is so much better than plastic, because the plastic, a lot of times plastic leaches toxic chemicals into your food. So if you're already using that glass, maybe go through recycling this week and pick out a few glass containers that still have, I love the ones that have really good lids on them, like spaghetti sauce jars and jellies and things, because those twist on lids are great and they hold so well. I didn't think about the freezing thing, but that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, totally. And it's also really good for, organizing your kitchen in an aesthetically pleasing way. So I use mason jars all the time in my kitchen to store, like grains and flowers and stuff. It's a really good, flowers meaning like baking flowers, not garden flowers. It's a really easy way to store and it looks really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And that also goes right into, with mason jars, your bulk buying in farmers markets, because we know that being more sustainable in the kitchen starts with what you buy at the grocery store. It's the food that you have on hand and what you can make with it. So you can also take all those mason jars to a bulk buying place. And it's also can be a lot cheaper to buy in bulk for grains or flour and things like that. And it also can help lower your carbon footprint if you shop local and go to farmers markets to get all this great food. So I think a lot of times people think, oh, the only way I can get this is buying it pre-packaged in plastic, when a lot of the times you can go to bulk and get it all for way cheaper in your own containers. It looks better in your kitchen, like you're saying. So yeah, I think that that's a great tip for reusing your glass containers. Number 3 is
water use. And this is one that I actually I'm still learning a lot about. So I'm a little bit late to the the water conservation train in the kitchen. But turns out I was actually doing a lot of things already to save water and I didn't even know. So but yeah, there are so many ways that you can cut down on the amount of water that you're using in the kitchen. One of them is, if you are lucky to have a dishwasher, run the dishwasher only when it's full. So it may be tempting, if you have that resource, to just run it when you have a few things in it because you don't feel like, washing them. But the best thing to do for the environment is wait until it's at its capacity and then to run it.
For sure. And something that we do in my kitchen too, to add on to the water use, is the eco nozzles. So this was something my mother put in a long time ago. I didn't even know what it was when she was doing it, but it actually makes the amount of water running out of the nozzle less. So when you're running it for a long period of time, you're using less water use. So it can be sort of frustrating because the water pressure isn't as hard as it would be, but I think it's worth it because when you're washing dishes or filling up, it makes you more conscious of how much water you're actually using.
Absolutely. And one thing that I actually thought about in terms of water pressure and the amount of water that comes out of your nozzle is for cleaning dishes. One of my favorite ways to clean out containers like that I've had leftovers in, like jars that are hard to clean. They're hard to get, in there with the sponge. A lot of us might be tempted to kind of blast it with water and just, try to get in the nooks and crannies of the containers. But the best way to do it is to fill it up, maybe like a quarter of an eighth of the way, depending on how big the container is. Put a little bit of dish soap in there, turn off the water, and then just close it and shake it. And that gets a lot of the stuff out without you having to run the water constantly. So that's a good way. Don't necessarily feel like you have to rinse all of your dishes before you put them into the dishwasher. The dishwasher usually does a pretty good job. If you can avoid rinsing something before you put it in. Obviously, there's some things that the dishwasher can't get, so you have to
like bigger chunks of food and things, but besides that, you just load it all in.
Yeah.
So water use is something that you can look more into in your own life and see how much water you're using in your day-to-day. There's also water calculators. You can log on and log, what type of faucet you have and different things like that. And you can actually see your water use, and it'll give you tips about how to decrease it. So there's so many resources out there that you can use to decrease your water use in your kitchen. So what are we on now? 4?
4.
Okay, number 4.
Okay, so a couple of months ago, a little company called Imperfect Foods found its way to New York City, and it kind of exposed me to this whole world of food subscriptions that decrease food waste. And I think that this is such a cool trend that has come, to us.
Yeah,
and it's great in so many ways. So basically, for those people who are not familiar with this concept, there are food delivery subscriptions out there. So just like your normal grocery delivery service, you log on, you have a cart that's been pre-filled for you with seasonal produce and items, and you can customize it based on what you want for the week. And the items are all either produce that's off spec, so too small, too big, doesn't look good. Usually they look fine, but by grocery store standards, they have to, I guess, pick the prettiest produce. It's also food where the packaging is out of date, or there was something wrong with the barcode, so they couldn't send it to the grocery store. Those things all go to these food subscription services. And then they're typically cheaper than most other grocery services. And what I like about them, and there's several, there's Imperfect Foods, there's Misfits Market, there's a bunch of others too. So look up what's in your area. But what I love about these is that you can look at them ahead of time and see what's coming, and it's a way for you to plan your meals accordingly. So there's, you know, the wonderful benefit of reducing food waste, but then there's also the added benefit of being able to, it kind of forces you to think ahead and plan your meals around these things that you're getting.
Yeah, and I feel like meal planning is something that is so important. And sometimes people get on these kicks of like, we're going to meal prep or meal plan for the week, and they'll do it for like a few weeks, but then they go back into this, you know, fast food takeout diet. Like, especially in New York City, we get so busy, or people just that have really busy 9-to-5 jobs, and they get off and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't go cook right now. But I feel like one of these subscriptions would make it a lot easier because you already have pre-planned the week of what you're going to make. So I could see how that would, you know, save a lot of food waste and also help you probably eat a lot healthier as well, because you're eating these fresh foods that are good for you, even if they're not, you know, the perfect, you know, red, brown tomato, you know, weird, like imperfect tomatoes are my favorite. The ones that have like big, like lumps off the side. I'm like, it's the cutest thing ever. I love disproportionate tomatoes.
I know. And so sometimes they'll send me a carrot that's like the size of my arm, and I'm like, oh my God. But then I have, you know, it's basically like a bag's worth of carrots in one carrot, and I can just use that carrot all week for different things. So yeah, it's really fun. And another thing that's great about it is that it makes me more conscious of how much I'm using. So I tend to use mostly everything I order. It's by weight. It's not by package. So you can get just 1 or 2 lemons. You can get 1 or 2 potatoes. You don't have to get a whole bag of potatoes. You don't have to get a whole bag of carrots. Right. It's by weight. The only thing,
a lot better for smaller families probably too, or individuals. Yeah, you're not wasting as much.
Absolutely. My family, I usually live in the city, but during, you know, this time I've been with my family in the suburbs of New York, and we've been doing the Imperfect Foods thing too, and it's been perfect for us. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so subscription to decrease food waste. I think that's great. I'll link some below so you can check them out. And then lastly, number 5.
Number 5. Okay. This is my favorite one. It's just be creative. And by this, I mean, take stock of what's in your pantry, what's in your fridge. You had a great tip about how you move the things that are expiring towards the front of the fridge. You do an inventory every week, which I do as well, but I have to do that tip about moving the expired things to the front, because it's so easy, you know, when you go shopping, you just shove stuff in there and then
you forget. It's like, yeah, the fridge inventory something is the fridge inventory thing is something I've been doing for a while, and it's actually really fun because I also get a kick out of organizing. I like to put things in good places. So when I open up my fridge, usually once a week, I'll take out a lot of the produce. You just have to be careful to, while you're doing it, make sure you close the fridge so you're not wasting all that energy and it's like coming out into your kitchen. A lot of the times I'll do it and get so caught up, the fridge will start beeping at me to shut the door because I'm wasting the energy. So you just have to be a little bit mindful when you do it. But when you take everything out, you can organize and move all the things that are, I guarantee you'll find some moldy foods in there, some things that you forgot you bought, and doing that inventory is a great way to keep track of everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I do take inventory, I like to think in my head, how can I make a meal out of what's here? And I have a couple of go-to meals that I like to make that kind of use up lots of different foods. So for me, you know, pasta dishes, it's really easy to just take the vegetable scraps in your kitchen and, you know, saute them and then throw them into a pasta. Frittatas, I really love frittatas. It's a 1-pan meal. It's, you know, packed with protein. You can get lots of vegetables in there. You can use up eggs that are going bad. You can use up milk that's going bad, or that not that's going bad, but that, you know, is
You have for a while.
Cheese is, it's really easy to just like dump anything in there. What else? Salads, you know, like a grain salad or a leafy salad. It's so easy to just throw vegetable scraps in there. Yeah, and I really like using, you know, preventing food waste as an excuse to come up with new ideas for foods in the kitchen. Like a lot of my recipes on my blog and a lot of the recipes that I, you know, are not on my blog, but that I make for myself regularly are recipes that were born out of, you know, clean out the fridge meals.
Yes, I love that. The clean out the fridge meals. That's really what got me started with your Instagram and like really paying attention to all your story highlights. Cause I was like, ooh, like, what is she making today? Like, I'm always so curious because I feel like being creative is, you know, it is like an excuse. Like people are always wanting to find ways to be creative in their own life and to be inspired. And the kitchen is such an easy way of doing it, and also decreasing your food scraps and just being a more conscious, you know, kitchen user, connoisseur, whatever words we want to use. But like, yeah, just being aware in the kitchen for sure. Well, is there anything else that you want to add about sustainability in the kitchen?
I don't think so. I mean, I just, in general, I feel like being sustainable in the kitchen, a lot of people think it's hard and that it costs a lot of money. And in some ways, you know, if you're buying lots of expensive products, and there are lots of really great products out there that do cost money and do need a little more upkeep, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than buying products for your kitchen. There are so many ways that you can, you know, take little steps to do this, and it's actually really easy.
Yeah.
And I think I said this already, but, you know, as I've been going on this journey to, you know, make my kitchen more sustainable, it's actually made cooking more fun. And that's sort of my whole thing, is cooking is fun. It's supposed to be creative. And by, you know, living sustainably and being sustainable in the kitchen, you'll come up with so many ideas and it'll be more fun to, you know, just be in the kitchen and cooking.
And don't let this type of video discourage you from jumping in. We gave you 5 ways to be more sustainable, but you can start with one. You know, the one thing that stuck out to you that you're like, oh, I can do that today. Then that's making a positive change towards the environment, because it's not about everybody being perfect. It's about everybody taking these little steps to raise our consciousness to live better with the planet. So that's really what our goal is. And it sounds like Sarah is saying that, you know, cooking in the kitchen is fun. It saves time. It also has health benefits. It's creative. So we hope that this video has given you tons of tips about how you can be more sustainable in your kitchen. And we hope that you join us next week on Blooming Change. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Meredith.
Thanks.